Hey everyone, this week we're going to talk about the six-figure success script. And this is a technique that I've used for a very long time. It has literally landed me hundreds of sales, and it's landed clients and students thousands, if not 10,000s of sales. So this is probably the single most effective, quickest technique that I can teach you to have an immediate impact on your business. And so I'm super excited about this week's lesson. I hope that you guys take it to heart and you start implementing it right away, because this is a fantastic way to grow your business right now, as well as plant seeds for the future. So the concept I want you to remember is that I'd really like for you to connect with 2 people a day for about 300 days out of the year. Now we know there's 365 days, so we're going to take some holidays off and maybe we go on vacation out of town, and you know, it's just not a good place to mine or fish for prospects. So we figure, you know what, let's throw out 65 days. And in reality, that's 2 whole months. So 300 days is not really that big a deal. So we're going to take these 300 days and we're going to connect with 2 people. If we can connect with 3 people, even better. Because if we connect with 3 people a day for 300 days, that's 900 new contacts. That's 900 people that go into our pipeline that know us and like us. Then all we have to do is set the appointment to build the trust. If we close just 5% of that pool of people, we're talking about an additional 45 transactions a year. And so the numbers get pretty big, and that's only 5%. That's a really small percentage. That's only if you connect with 3 people. What if it was 4? What if it was 8? What if it was a minimum of 3, but there were days that you did 5 and there were days that you did 6 or maybe even 10? Because you know, sometimes if we're working an open house or we're working an event, it's relatively easy to connect with a lot of people in a short amount of time. So whatever that means to you, however you're going to connect with these 2 people, and we can talk a little bit about that after we talk about the technique, but however you connect with these 2 people, 3 people every single day without exception for 300 days at least, then we'll talk about sort of what to do with them, and we'll do that in a later video. We're going to talk about the follow-up sequence. But for now, let's focus in on something that we're going to just set a commitment. We're going to meet 2 to 3 people every single day. When we meet these people, I want you to remember the acronym GIO, G-I-O. If we get these 3 things covered in a very brief conversation, then we're going to build that likability. So they're going to get to know us, we're going to get to know them, they're going to like us, be more likely to move forward to the next step. Make sense? Great. So the first is G, geography. We just want to start this conversation asking them about their geography, which would be along the lines of, are you from Arizona? Are you from California? Wherever you happen to be. Doesn't matter what they say, because either way, we're going to know the direction that we go. And the whole point of the six-figure success script is that we always know where we're going through this very brief conversation to establish that likability factor about us. We know through scientific study that when people talk about themselves, it releases dopamine in their brain. And there are causes of dopamine and release in the brain that are very, very powerful things, like gambling, like alcohol, like sex, like drugs. All of those things trigger a dopamine release in the brain, and that dopamine release in the brain makes you feel this sense of accomplishment, this sense of ecstasy, so to speak, this sense of joy. So when we do this technique correctly, what ends up happening is the prospect has dopamine released in their brain. That association is because we're talking to them. So their brain will connect us with that dopamine release and bring about that likability factor. And so that's why it's so important that we really take our time and we go through this process very thoroughly. So we're going to ask about geography. And I'm in Arizona, so I would ask, are you from Arizona? Again, it doesn't matter what they say, because if they say yes, I can say, wow, you're a native. What part of town did you grow up in? And then we can talk about that part of town. Have you lived in any other areas of town? Did you ever move out of Arizona? If they say, no, I'm not from Arizona, that's even easier, right? Where are you from? And what brought you here to Arizona? And what's your favorite thing about Arizona so far? What do you miss most about wherever you moved here from? And you have this conversation, right? It's all about their geography. And just let them talk. The goal is to get them talking. The goal is not to say, oh, you're from California. I always wanted to move there. And my sister-in-law lives in Anaheim. And I went to Anaheim, but then I went to San Diego. This is not about you telling stories about your geography. This is 100% about their geography. Now, it's going to happen. They're going to say, well, I'm from Indiana. Where are you from? And you can just very briefly tell them where you're from. I'm from Colorado. And then ask another question, right? So if I say, are you from Arizona? And they say no. And I say, great, where are you from? And they say, well, I'm from Indiana. Where are you from? And I say, oh, I'm from Colorado. What brought you here to Arizona? What part of the city do you live in? Side of the valley do you live in? So no matter what they say, I just want to briefly answer, acknowledge that they asked it, of course, but then go back to them until I can't think of any more questions to ask about geography, right? Because they can say, I came here for work, and I said, well, okay, and what part of town do you live in? And, what's your favorite restaurant over there? Or have you been to any other parts? What made you decide, how did you pick the East Valley as opposed to the West Valley? It doesn't matter as long as we're asking questions about the geography that makes sense. Okay, so the next thing that we do when we can't think of any more geography questions to ask and we're sort of out of that line, then we just move into, and what do you like to do for fun out here in Arizona? And they might say, I don't know, I really like bowling, but I haven't found a bowling alley yet. Doesn't matter. Just get them talking about their hobbies and interests. If they ask you, what do people out here do? It's so darn hot. And you say, well, obviously we wait for the winter. But, hiking is wonderful out here. And maybe give them a couple of examples of places to hike. Now, you have to be taking mental notes about all of this, because when we follow up, we have to reference some of the things that we had in this conversation. We have to pick one or 2 points out of the geography or the interest or the occupation, right? Because that's the O. So G is for geography, I is for interest, O is for occupation. We have to pick points from 1 or 2 points from those things to be able to reference when we follow up. And that's an important part of it that makes them feel like we really listened to what they said, and that strengthens that connection. Because all we're looking to do is strengthen that connection so that we have earned the right to sit down with them and talk about business. Because nowhere in this conversation are we going to talk about business. This is strictly, the Six-Figure Success Script is strictly to provide a dopamine release so that they associate you with that feeling. There's no business talk during this portion of it. Okay, we'll talk about how you close that and set it up for the next step. But right now, you've talked about the geography, and you've asked as many questions as you can about geography, where they're from, why they're here, where they live, anything you can think of geography-wise. We've moved into interests, and what you want to do is you just want to let them talk. This is all about letting them talk. So if they say, well, I'm out here and it's really hot, we just moved here, or, maybe they're here and I like tennis. And so you can be honest and say, I've never played tennis. How'd you start playing tennis? Well, when I was a kid. What do you like most about it? How would one get started? How does somebody get started in tennis? Can somebody start when they're a little bit older like me? And what they're going to do is they're just going to open up, and you'll see that their body language is going to change because they're talking about something that they're very interested in, very passionate about. So the more you get them to talk about this again, the better off that you're going to be, because the whole goal is to keep them talking about themselves. If they ask you what your hobbies are, you can laugh a little bit and say, I like to golf, or whatever, I like to go bowling. Immediately ask them another question. Because if not, what ends up happening is it becomes a conversation where you're splitting time, and we don't want that. We want it to feel like a conversation, but we want it to be about them. We want them doing 80% of the talking. So we have to remember that. And that's why knowing this little script and knowing the GIO is so important, because no matter what happens, if you get off track, you know exactly to go back to where you left off in which portion you were at. Okay, so we've gone through their interests now, and then you could just ask, so, and try to use their name about every third sentence. So Bob, so Bill, so Mary, what kind of work do you do? Same line, how long have you been doing that? What made you get into becoming a pharmacist? Just keep those questions coming. Make it comfortable, you know, have a casual posture, smile, be generally interested. Just be generally interested in learning about them. Be genuinely interested about learning their geography, their interest in their occupation. At the end of it, be gracious and thank them. Say, thank you for allowing me to introduce myself. I'm a local business owner, like I told you before. I'd love to keep in touch. What works better, email or text? And then that's how you're going to leave it. You'll collect the email, you'll collect the text. Now keep in mind, this is like any portion of sales, not going to work 100% of the time. Some people are going to not want you to follow up. Some people are going to say, my wife is a realtor, my brother is a loan originator, you know, my father-in-law is an insurance agent. So we're not looking to bat 100% here. If you remember at the beginning of the video, I talked about 5%, just 5% of these people moving forward, and we're at another 45 transactions a year. You know, if it's 10%, that's another 90 transactions a year. And I know we get all caught up in Facebook and Instagram and blah, 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 leads. Well, this is a great way for you to have somewhere between 600 and 1,000 leads that are not cold. These are leads that know you and like you, that you have connected with over the next 12 months. And so don't devalue this process. This is a very important process, because I will put these 1,000 prospects, these 900 prospects, up against 10,000 cold leads, up against 10,000 leads you get off Facebook ads, likes, and, you know, hey, I'm interested in your first time buyers program, because they don't know you and they don't like you. They don't know anything about you other than they saw a Facebook ad or they saw a post that piqued their interest. These people you talk to throughout this script are going to know you and they're going to like you. They have connected with you. You have made them feel good. You have made them feel important. So that is very, very valuable. These are much more valuable leads, prospects, than you're going to get in any other manner. So I would tell you, make this a daily activity. Make it a point to connect with 2 to 3 people every single day. More if you can. Because these people are going to be a great source of referrals also. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit through the whole script. We're going to do a little bit of review, and then in a couple of weeks we're going to talk about the follow-up sequence of this. Because like any prospect or any lead, if we don't follow up correctly, then we've wasted everything we did before that. And so when I talk to groups of people, and when we talk about the success that my past members have experienced, one of the biggest things that I found out about those past members is that, number one, the leads were not as strong because they never connected with them. The lead was looking for some information, but had never connected with the person on it. The danger with that is once they know that information, if it's not unique to you, they can shop around and choose someone else. So number one is they were working leads that were not as strong. And number two was almost every single one of them admitted that they didn't have a process for follow-up, much less an effective process for follow-up. And so we have to understand that the follow-up process through all of this is going to be just as important as meeting people. In these situations, and I've done this in a variety of different ways. I have had booths at fairs. I have had booths at golf tournaments. I have stood in front of Target and offered to help people carry bags to their cars. I have worked at the car wash. I've gone to the car wash and taken a roll of quarters and offered to vacuum people's cars. I'm not saying that you have to do any of these things, but what I'm telling you is open your mind up on how to meet people, on places where people congregate, places where people go in groups, places where people move through lines, because it's a really good place. Keeping in mind this conversation only takes 5 minutes or so, that you can physically meet 10 to 12 people an hour and connect with them. So when I say connect with 2 or 3, it's really not, doesn't take up that much time. What it does is it takes focus and effort. You have to be determined that no matter what happens today, you're going to connect with 2 to 3 people. And when you make that decision, this becomes extremely easy. And think about it, after 1 month, you're going to have 100 people that you have connected with, close to. About 90, 93, statistically, whatever. But you're gonna have 90 people you connected with. The likelihood that one of those people can transact with you in the next 6 months is pretty high. Statistically, we know that a percentage of every 100 people are going to move in the next few years. So a percentage of that percentage is going to move within a year, and a percentage of that percentage is going to move within a month, 6 months. They get lower as the time frame gets shorter, but it doesn't matter. The whole point is you are planting seeds that you will harvest later. We're not going to go from the amount of transactions we do right now to double overnight. That process takes a lot of planting, takes a lot of farming before we get to harvest. This is the most critical step in planting those seeds to harvest later. So in any situation, what I do is I walk up to someone and I tell them, I am a local business owner, I'm a local business person, whatever's appropriate for your industry. One of my goals as a professional is to meet 2 new people every single day. My name is Matt. What's your name? They tell you their name and you go right into the geo script. So if they say their name is Bob, you say, it's great to meet you, Bob. Are you from Arizona? No, I'm not. Great. Where are you from? Oh, you're from Idaho. I heard it's beautiful there. They'll say something about that. Bob, what brought you here to Arizona? I came here for work. I'm a snowbird. Whatever the story is. And what do you like most about Arizona? What made you choose Arizona? They'll say the weather, or they'll say the Mayo Clinic, or they'll say whatever it is they say, and you just continue along the geo conversation. What do you miss most about Idaho? What's the major industry in Idaho? What do people do up there for a living? Right? Keep that conversation going about geo as long as you can, about geography. Go into interests. Bob, what do you do for fun out here in Arizona? I'm a golfer. What's your favorite golf course? How long have you been golfing? What do you like most about it? Are you good? How does somebody get into golfing? Is it, am I too old to start golfing? Whatever those appropriate questions are, you just ask them. But you exhaust as many interest questions as you can. And then you just transition right into occupation. What do you do for a living? What made you get into that? How long have you been doing it? Etc., etc. You close with, like I told you, I'm a local business owner, I'm a local agent, I'm a local loan originator. I'd love to follow up with you just so you remember who I am. What works better, text or email? And that's it. Have that conversation 3 times a day, and you will add a minimum of 45 transactions, if not 90, to your book of business in the next 12 months. I will attach a PDF of the script right here inside the website, so you'll see that in the download section off to the right. Download it, memorize it, practice it, because you need it to sound like a conversation. You don't want it to sound like a script. When you perfect this, it will change your business. Again, I'm not big into tips and tricks. I don't think there is a magic wand, but if there's one thing I can promise you that will change your business almost immediately, it's this script. So I wish you guys the best of luck. We'll see you in the morning videos all week this week. I'm excited about you moving forward. Always, if you have questions, you can email me, text me, or call me. Have a great week.